What's up, Karma Nation? Welcome back to the Week 7 edition of the Cash Process. I'm your host, AC, with DFSKarma.com and also BetKarma.com. As usual, I got Ben Hostler joining me tonight. We're going to talk everything, what we did right, what we did wrong over Week 6 cash games. We'll sprinkle in a little FanDuel stuff, and then we'll look ahead to what I think and what Ben thinks is probably the hardest week on paper going into making a cash type build, which we both love. I mean, there's weeks we come on here and we have a strong inclination as to where everybody's going minus a couple of 2v2 pivots. So I think this week in specific is going to be the most challenging, but the most rewarding for grinders like you guys and us who are in the trenches early in the week, studying all the content that it comes at DFSKarma.com, looking through the analytics, the projections portal, which shout out to the YouTube fam. You're looking at it right now. We have the quarterbacks page open. That's a premium product. And then our core plays and our final thoughts come out later in the week. That's how we're going to get through a week like this, right? So, Ben, with that being said, I'm going to go right to you. Talk about Week 6. You got back on the winning bandwagon. So let me hear what you did right, what you did wrong, and then take a first glance and anything else you want to go over before we get into Week 7.
Yeah, so it was a good week for us for the core plays subscribers. Battled back, had a big win, so got back to 3-3 for the season. You and I didn't have the same build, but something that separated us both was we both played Cooper Kupp, and I really dug in. I was really and I came on and I talked about it the last few weeks on this exact video, but I got really unlucky the last few weeks, and I was just angry about it by the time we got to this past weekend. So I really dug in on Saturday and went to war with the slate, and came out that it just seemed like we had to play Cooper Kupp, right? He was getting almost Devontae Adams usage. He was significantly cheaper, and to top it off, obviously you and I both utilize our projections portal a lot, which we have up on the screen right now, but he was popping, I believe, number 1 overall ranked player in our projections.
Correct, number 1.
Yeah, so when I was debating my 2v2s, I just kept coming back to Kupp, how well he's projecting. I felt good about him, felt good about the Rams in general. They had the second highest team total, so I didn't mind pairing him with Henderson in my lineup, and I thought he was going to be kind of chalky. He ended up, like you said before we hopped on here, he was only 15% owned. Even in my single entry tournaments, the higher dollar ones, he was 15% owned. I couldn't believe it, but that really was a big separator for us, and that led to the big week.
I just want to harp on a couple things you just said, right? Again, real quick to take a little housekeeping. Again, anybody that's watching on YouTube, it's honestly surreal the amount of likes we're getting. If you guys can, leave a comment. Ben and I hop in there. We're answering questions. FanDuel, we don't talk as much. Anything you want to talk about in the comments section, but please give us a like and give us a review if you can on Apples and iTunes and all that jazz. But you can find under YouTube access to everything Ben just said under YouTube. If you just click that drop down arrow, Ben mentioned a couple things. Number 1, Ben was highly convincing in his content this week, right? I act as the customer as well, and you kind of got me on a Cooper Kupp just on your writing in your premium article of Cooper Kupp, and we did kind of talk in Discord that he might be lower owned, and Sam was projecting him around that 15% ownership. And to your point, you mentioned another thing. And I kept coming back to the same thing, the projections portal. I harp on it every week on this show. Cooper Kupp was by far our number 1 karma value, and that is a thing. I mean, these things that what do I say every week on this show? Let the data do the work, right? It's not going to always be the signifying, answer, but more often than not, it's going to be right. And then finally, Ben, 2 more things. In your final thoughts, Cooper Kupp was the number 1 guy you had in your orange lock cash area. And even in the core plays, Ben, it depends. Sometimes I get to my core plays first, and some of the other guys that we have on our team, sometimes you do. I had Cooper Kupp basically 90%, but I was kind of toying with a couple of different lineups, as we all do, DFS grinders, into Sunday. But I think you, correct me if I'm wrong, put your core play up on Saturday, and I happened to check it out. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's convincing. It's Cooper Kupp again. And that's all I need to see. Ben's on him. So, as a customer, you can use all these things, again, that you can access, that drop down arrow on YouTube right there. Click, subscribe, and you can come to these same winning decisions that Ben and I do weekly. I had another good week myself. I think I've cashed in 4 out of 6 main slates this year with my main build. Like Ben said, I had a similar lineup. Couple differences. I didn't have Henderson, but it was a great lineup, and I played a lot of high dollar stuff as well. Didn't have a great week in MME, but didn't expect 2 weeks in a row with that. But very happy with the outcome on both FanDuel and DraftKings. So, Ben, I'm going to go right back to you. Let's get started with quarterback, week 7. Karma projections portal is up. Who are you looking at? Who's your top 2 or 3 plays for the week?
Yeah, so leading off at the top, 2 guys over 8K, Kyler Murray, Mahomes. Kyler, we mentioned him a little bit on this video last week. Then everyone was freaked out about the wind in his shoulder. He finally had the big game we had been waiting for. Unfortunately, it came at the expense of our Cleveland Browns, but he's priced right next to Mahomes. I think I played Mahomes in cash last week. We were talking a bit pre-pod. I don't know if we're going to end up with enough value to fit him in, but Mahomes clearly, I mean, he's popping in highest projected player right now in the projections, but I think he's clearly the number 1 play as of right now. He scored 28 DraftKings points last week, and that was getting unlucky. I mean, 2 red zone rushing touchdowns for the Chiefs, 3 actually turnovers inside the 30 or 40. I mean, they were getting down there. I think 2 were in the red zone. So he could have had a absolutely massive game and still wasn't bad. So I think he's probably my favorite option overall. We know that the Titans are a matchup that you can attack through the air. They're down 2 corners now. Fulton's on IR, and then they lost Farley last night, who was their first round pick. So I think he's my favorite overall option. If you don't have the money to spend, I think the field's gonna gravitate to either Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, the guys with rushing upside. Lamar ran super bad last week as well. 3 rushing touchdowns in the red zone for the Ravens. Missed Andrews on what would have been a pretty wide open touchdown for his second touchdown pass. But he's still too cheap against the Bengals. And then Hurts, this is one of the most polarizing figures in sports. I feel like he clearly struggles real life football wise, but he always gets there fantasy wise, man. I mean, I think he's averaged around 27 fantasy points per game over his 11 or 12 starts, whichever number it's been. I mean, he's averaging 26 DraftKings points per game this season. Not like a bad matchup, right? Against the Raiders. Definitely can get there. They've given up 140 rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, so I think most people will probably look at that Lamar Hurts tier, but I really would like to get up to Mahomes if possible.
I love everything you said. Very strong agreement on probably right now leaning Patrick Mahomes. I think this week, like I said, is considering it's very challenging. The one thing I wanted just lock in is quarterback. I mean, I know in years past we're always paying down and it's like, all right, I'll figure out the rest. This is a prime opportunity. You just explained all the reasons why. I see at least 30 points here this week for Patrick Mahomes. If I absolutely love a lineup and I need more salary, my number 2 play without a doubt for me is Jalen Hurts. I totally agree with you. He's probably not the best real life quarterback. This is not the podcast for that, but he gets it done fantasy wise. And I like the discount at $1,500 in savings. So, they're both going to be highly owned. Quick couple notes here. This is something Ben and I were interjecting into this podcast this year. We've got a lot of feedback from it. My attorney thoughts, just as you're talking, taking down some notes. It's not like I don't think Kyler Murray and an Arizona stack, with the Hopkins #revenge narrative against Houston is going to be under-owned. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like with a slate like this, we're going to see some concentration here on, the Jalen Hurts game, the Chiefs game. So maybe that Murray stack does go under-owned, for 3 max entry players. And then the other thing I will mention, we're going to get to it right now. Let's go to running back. So I'll start the lead here, which kind of finishes my thoughts, Ben. At quarterback is, man, I mean, Matthew Stafford this week is projecting our number 1 karma value. I have a feeling he's going to go under-owned based on everything else we just said. Just right. Just a thought for you leverage tournament players, especially with Darrell Henderson probably being the chalk du jour play of the week. I'm assuming Darrell Henderson is going to be the highest owned player of this entire slate. And, all for good reasons. Ben can get into them as well. But again, I like that Stafford pivot in leverage. So now we have running backs pulled up on the screen. It's an interesting week, Ben. We've come on this podcast 6 times this year, right? And the karma value has found some very strong plays, as do some of the other projection services out there, of course. But you can clearly see decisions are going to be needed to be made this week. It is not as clear cut and clear dry as one would think. Of course, Derrick Henry coming off the monster game on Monday night, 9,200 does seem like, again, in air quotations, a lock. I'm not arguing that. I'm going to consider playing Derrick Henry. But the reality is, Ben brought up a good point. Is it a good play if Mahomes and them get up 2 scores early? I don't know. There's a lot of questions. You would think potentially not. I know King Henry doesn't matter, but look what the data is telling you. Negative 2.57 karma value. It's really not a great projection, me being math nerd that I am, but I'm going to consider playing Derrick Henry only because of opportunity cost. Because Ben, I will let you go from here. There's just not that many guys this week. It's like we will be picking and plucking from the 5 to 6K range and just praying that some of those guys have a really good week. They've all been kind of bad plays, so to speak, early in the year, but some of them are talented. I'll let you get to some of them. But what are your thoughts on Derrick Henry? You don't need to harp on Darrell Henderson. He's going to be chalk.
Yeah, good point you brought up about Stafford, though. It's not in Detroit, but is a little revenge game, right, against his former team. First time facing them.
Yeah.
So probably wants to put on a show. Wouldn't shock me if McVay schemes it up that way as well. But yeah, Henry's definitely going to be the question. I feel like he always is, right? When this was happening towards the end of last season, it was just becoming the question of if you're playing Henry or not. More oftentimes than not, we played him. This is a weird week. He's 9,200. Next closest is Aaron Jones at 7,500, and there's other than Barkley, if he plays, no one above 7K. Right? He's below as 67. So there's gonna be some decisions to be made. I'm not gonna tell you to fade him. I don't have an honest answer about what I'm gonna do on Tuesday, but it's just before we continue here, he's not fadeable, but it's how do you not play him, right? With what he's been doing,
Mm-hmm.
it's insane what the numbers that he's been putting up and how consistent he is. But outside of him, in the mid tier, I don't know who you sticks out to you the most. We were kind of talking about Darrell Williams, who scored two carries inside the 5 for the Chiefs last week, scored on both of them. Obviously, we expect the Chiefs to put up a lot of points in this matchup. So I think he's fine at 58. He got 21 attempts, right? I don't know if I can pull up the snap count and see exactly the amount of snaps. I know McKinnon was definitely in the game, but he got the ball a lot and he got the ball close. So
it's not a bad play, and frankly, I would consider it. But man, it just seems like, especially with everything going on in the Tennessee secondary,
72% of the snaps for him last week, which that's
Yeah,
about I would have guessed 70.
It's a favorable play. It's not a bad play. That's what I'm saying. This whole week is very interesting. All these guys in this range, man, the 6K to 5K guys.
Yeah, you brought up Miles Sanders, which I think is a good call because coming into that game against the Bucs, everyone was talking about Gainwell's taking over. Sanders might be done. Sanders played a ton. So if you look at that game, the game before that, he played 75% of the snaps, and then in that last game, 83% of the snaps. So he's been on the field a lot. I think he's too cheap at 5,100. You can't count on him to be super involved because they clearly just don't want to run the ball a lot. But I think 5,100, the price has just fallen too far, and you can definitely consider Miles Sanders.
Yeah, this is your classic. We talk on this weekly, yearly. This is one of those stock prices of XYZ good company that has just become too cheap for reasons unknown, right? And at some point, it's is the bottom in on Miles Sanders? I think so. The karma value projection clearly is showing of anybody below 5,700 on this entire slate, Miles Sanders is the best mathematical play. And at some point in time, talking about stocks and comparing, the talent of the players, Miles Sanders in this range of pricing is just the most talented player in this range. So it's, sometimes I think in DFS we all overthink it, including myself. I mean, historically, game theory wise, man, it just, again, I think it's a fascinating slate because it seems like there will be two routes to go. Are you going to go Jalen Hurts or Mahomes? And then are you going to play Darrell Williams or are you not? And, if you get it right, let's just say hypothetically, Ben and I seem to be on the wavelength of the Mahomes passing and then maybe stuffing in Miles Sanders. Talk about game theory. You could have Miles Sanders, again, in theory, go off this week, for 4X. And somehow he takes away a lot of the rushing touchdowns or upside from Jalen Hurts. And there will be a lot of players that play Jalen Hurts, and then vice versa with Darrell Williams if Mahomes and the KC passing attack goes off and Darrell Williams flops. I mean, you could be massively ahead with just a couple of these decisions. Just what I'm kind of thinking about right now as you're talking.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if I want to play him in cash, but another guy I do think is in play is James Conner. It's a good matchup against Houston. Like you would expect, obviously the Cardinals to win that game and remain undefeated, but he's been getting the ball a ton when they get close. Like they haven't really been letting Kyler run it in, and I mean he's been getting a lot of rushing attempts as well. So that's not necessarily someone I want to play in cash because Edmonds is still involved, but it wouldn't shock me if he trolls and scores like a couple touchdowns, especially if they're up big.
He is on my season-long team, but that's a no for me, Ben. We'll disagree there. I'm just not going there. The only other person we didn't mention before we go to wide receiver, I do think there's room to play Chuba Hubbard this week, right? I mean,
yeah, 100%.
I feel like he's the guy. He only had one catch last week, and he only had 13 fantasy points in DraftKings, so people might shy away because, everybody's a game logger once you get to week 7. They get lazy with their research, but he's still the guy. I don't know if you have the snap percentage in front of you. I do like that play a lot. Again, it just depends on – this is a week you can play double tight end and flex. I did last week. So did Ben, I think. Wide receiver and flex. I just don't think you need to stuff in 3 running backs this week. You can. And again, I'll try. And we mentioned, I think, on week 3 of the cash process that like this is something that we've started gravitating towards as time goes on, especially in PPR formats. Like it's okay to play wide receiver in flex or even a tight end. All right. Anybody else, or let's move to wide receiver.
We can move on, but I
Aaron
do
Jones
know,
is there.
Yeah, Aaron Jones definitely is there as well. Like we didn't really mention him, but you could certainly consider that. I just want to mention James Conner is 3rd in football and rush attempts inside the 5-yard line.
No, you just want to convince everybody to play James
No,
Conner.
I don't even want to play him. I'm just, for what it's worth. Like I'm not going to be shocked if he scores touchdowns and then we all lose our minds.
True. All right, let's go to wide receiver. So, before we got on here, Ben and I are both saying that this just seems like a premier week to go back to Davante Adams. I mean, that's not a hot take at all. I mean, he's 8,900. Obviously, that's very expensive. Or honestly, Ben, I mean, I know me, and I got to admit, I have a problem because I'm absolutely fascinated with correlation plays historically. That's even why I went the route I did last week. I played Tyreek. He was only like 6% owned in cash games. He fared well. I mean, he didn't go off by any means, but he hit value, scored a touchdown. And that was another big difference in my lineup besides having Cooper Kupp. I was able to bag a win in some GPP single entry stuff as well. But I envision, if you're going Mahomes, I mean, you might as well just go Tyreek. I mean, it's basically the same price point as Davante, but man, I got to admit, Ben, I am scared shitless fading Davante Adams this week. I just got a sneaky feeling this is that 35, 45-point game. Again, it's not a gut call. It's Washington absolutely sucks. In the secondary, it's a home game. Davante Adams is coming off somewhat of a down week, and I feel like it's always good to zig when other people zag. I don't know. Maybe he won't be his own in cash games this week, but, we should not be overthinking it, right? And then there's also Cooper Kupp at 8,400, who people probably won't play in cash games for sure. But, man, he is like my favorite tournament play of the entire slate. I mean, he's probably going to be owned, but I don't know. People won't play him, though.
Yeah, I mean, that would fit with the Stafford, like, popping off against the 4 team, right, getting Cooper Kupp. But, yeah, so if you look at just target leaders in the NFL, top 2, Cooper Kupp, number 1, 68 targets. Davante Adams, number 2, 66 targets. And then if you look at fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, the bottom 2, Tennessee is the worst. Second worst, Washington football team. And then the Lions are bad as well. But Tennessee obviously would fit with the Mahomes thing, and Tyreek is third in targets with 63. So it's a really good matchup for all these top guys. I agree that like this feels like the Adams week, right? Like he's coming off the 12-point game. Don't know if people will want to play him. Washington's so bad in the secondary. I mean, even his down game is like 13 DraftKings points. Like that's what you're mad about, and it came against Chicago, who's given up like no real huge games to receivers. So
Yeah.
I just don't think you need to worry about it. Those are definitely the top options. Moving down to the mid tier, number one thing that stuck out to me, which I brought up to you pre-video, but Calvin Ridley is 6,600. We know he's coming back. I know you can say it's a tough matchup or it's a run funnel, like whatever you want to say against Miami, but it's just too cheap for Calvin Ridley. And when we get to the end of the week, he's going to project well. So I think you have
Why
to
does
consider
Sam hate this matchup in the karma rank? Like something I feel like needs to get adjusted. He's ranked very low in our karma rank, but that must be something to do with him
Yeah, I mean, he
not
missed
playing
last
last
game,
week or
and like they just came out today, like earlier today, and said like he would play. So it's probably not like fully updated.
something.
Uh, AJ Brown, man, on the opposite side of the Chiefs, especially if you're playing at home, like that's a good correlation play. He was sick last night on Monday Night Football. Looked really good, right? 9 targets. He was a great buy low candidate before that game, and I mean, he played well through the sickness. Like they
He had
came
the
out and
Chipotle shits, Ben.
yeah,
Did you know
yeah,
that?
that's literally why. Yeah, I was joking
Who
with people in
doesn't get that
Discord.
after Chipotle? I mean, it's like every time I get Chipotle, I love it, but I hate it because you know that your stomach will not probably last that much longer.
Yeah,
It's the hardest
we
thing
were
ever.
joking about that in Discord, but definitely he's a good play. Sterling Shepard. We'll have to see what's going on with their receivers, but we know that Kadarius Toney is going to be out for this game most likely. We'll see if Slayton comes back or what's going on there, but I think 5,600 tough matchup, but 5,600 certainly is in play for the volume that he would see if Galladay and Tony are both out. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And then moving down, I don't know. I don't see anyone that's like really sticking out in that 5K tier range. I think people. I mean, T. Higgins is going to project well again. I know he didn't have a great game, only 7 DraftKings points. It's tough to trust them that offense when they're all fully healthy, but like he has the upside and the ability to score well. So I think he's probably going to project pretty well again at 4,900.
Yeah, I mean, you covered a lot there. I wonder if people go back to Brandon Cooks. I mean, especially in a game as my dog is yawning or something. I doubt people do, but I think it's interesting. Again, I'll talk leverage real quick too. Just looking at these high price guys, nobody's going to play DeAndre Hopkins at 7,700. I mean, look at the karma value is just projecting him for so low relative to his price point. So again, it's a way you can use the data to interpret how people will probably think about playing players because that's clearly it's weird saying that DeAndre Hopkins is priced too high at 7,700, but the circumstances have changed in Arizona. There's a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of players. There's a lot of ballers on that team. But, man, I feel like a nuke eruption game could be imminent, especially seeing him in Cleveland. Like, I mean, he was kind of all over the place. He looks healthy and talking about revenge narrative, right? Is that game in Houston, Ben? I mean, that might be DeAndre's first game in Houston since unless that's in Arizona. I can't see on my end right now. Anyways, as I go down, you mentioned a lot of the value. Karma value, yeah, it's picking up T. Higgins. It's also picking up Hunter Renfrow, who I actually was considering in my dummy lineup right now early in the week. 4,800, you probably may blink and look twice. But again, on a week like this, we talk about playing more players with ceiling upside, but I feel like look at Hunter Renfrow. Just go game log. I mean, the guy is just going to get value every week. It's not sexy, but he pulls it off. 4,800 seems fair, and Karma Value is telling you that. Also, Ben, your boy, shout out to you. You had a really good call with your core play last week. He was millimeters away from exploding your lineup with McCole Hardman. At 4,300 this week, his price hasn't changed. I think he was 42 last week. Again, Karma Value likes him a lot on the slate. In fact, as I'm scrolling through this, if you can, sort that, Ben, Hardman projects right now, because this is a very tough slate, is our number one value of the entire slate. So there you go. I mean, I probably will play Hardman and cash. I mean, frankly, if I'm playing Mahomes, it makes a lot of sense, but I'm also not scared to play Tyreek. I talked about that earlier. I will consider that. It's just a very tough slate, right? There's a couple guys in the 3K range you want to talk about. A Baltimore receiver you brought up earlier.
Yeah. There's some decent cheap plays the more that I'm looking at it. Definitely think Hardman is in play after playing him last week. I think Darnell Mooney's in play. So Mooney is up to, I think 34.5% of the Bears' air yards. It's a really good matchup against the Bucs secondary. That's like, it's going to be an interesting game because it's pretty clear that Nagy doesn't want Fields to be dropping back and throwing the ball a ton, but that's kind of what you have to do against that Bucs defense, especially if Tom Brady is scoring points on the other side. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. He finally scored last week. 4,600 I think is too cheap. I think the obvious cheap play of the week is Rashad Bateman. We'll see if Sammy Watkins comes back for this game or not, but Bateman ended up playing. It was his first game active off injury. Played 65% of the snaps, which was second on the team behind Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown 74%. So Bateman was at 65%. They were clearly making a point to get him on the field and get him the ball. They drafted him high. So I think he's just like a free square at 3,400. Like I said, things could change if Watkins comes back. Like, we'll wait and see. But as of right now at 3,400, like, I think you would just plug him in your lineup.
All right, Ben, if you don't mind, click tight ends on the projections portal. As that loads, I can already tell you guys this is going to be a very tough, interesting week at tight end. This is one of the fewer weeks. I mean, last week I trolled Discord by sending a snagged image of the projections portal late in the week, and I was just laughing at, like, how could you not make a good lineup this week? Because there was a lot of value projecting where you could really make a good cash build. I just felt like our entire community really couldn't drop the ball last week the way the projections portal was conveying the slate. This week, a lot harder, right? We talked about that already. Ricky Seals-Jones, we both benefited from that. I mean, he's up to 3,700, but he's probably still in play. I mean, people are, loyal in DFS to, somebody going off for them. So I feel like he's going to get owned no matter what. I'm not opposed to that play. I really like Mike Gesicki at 4,700. That's not a hot take. He will be owned as well, but 4,700 is getting up there for tight end, and people actually, myself and Ben included, don't really like to pay up. It's not paying up too much, but man, on a slate like this, I just feel like Gesicki is, I don't want to say a lock. Nothing in life is guaranteed, but I feel really good about Mike Gesicki this week at 4,700, getting at least 8 to 10 targets, having at least 6 receptions for 70 yards and maybe a score. So I like that a lot. Anyone else, Ben? I mean, I know we talked about Cole Kmet. I mean, 3K, talking about a bear, I feel like I'd rather have him over picking between Allen Robinson and Mooney. That's just me. 3K seems very cheap for Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's RSJ again, man. He's 3,700, but it's just too cheap, right? He's played I believe still all but one snap since Logan Thomas went out. He's run a route on all but 10 of Heineke's dropbacks over the last 2 games, and he's commanded like over 19% of the targets. He's playing receiver, and he's 3,700, and you can play him at tight end. So I think he's still the best play. He's the best value. I'm probably going to play him. The one interesting thing could be what goes on with Zach Ertz. I know it's his first week there, but they were playing Max Williams a lot. Like last year, they played a ton of 4 wide, and they wanted to just really spread people out. This season, they weren't playing as much 4 wide, and they were really like utilizing Max Williams. Obviously, he went down. They traded for Zach Ertz. He's only 3,900. I know, like, the joke last year was Zach Ertz is washed, but I mean, he hasn't been that bad this year. So I think we need to wait and see what's going on with him. 3,900 against Houston is interesting. I think Hunter Henry at 41 is interesting, but I don't know. Ricky Seals-Jones is the best play for me still.
As I rank it right now, value for me, it's Cole Kmet, then it's Gesicki, then it's Ricky Seals-Jones, and that's where I'm at. I will say, Ben and I really like Darren Waller as a massive leverage play in this entire slate. I mean, he looks like a guy that could just go for 30 this week. He's been quiet. It's something to think about for you tournament players. All right, really quick. We'll finish at defense then. I mean, as always, cheap defense and cash generally is the play. I mean, I don't know. I took a look at the Giants at 2,500. I was looking at the Eagles at 23. I mean, I don't know. I mean, pick a defense. They need to change the rules on both these sites and have 2 flex positions. Anything else, Ben, before we end the podcast? Again, great week. We look forward to you guys joining our community, checking out some of the free stuff on both betkarma.com, dfskarma.com. And like I said earlier, I mean, if you click below on this YouTube channel, you can find all the hyperlinks to our core plays, to our final thoughts, to our premium stuff. So we'd appreciate if you guys give that a look, give us a thumbs up, hop in the comment section, and Ben and I will be in there. Anything else, Ben?
No. Stay tuned to our content throughout the week. Potentially a new article.
Ooh, NBA.
Yeah, NBA's back, number 1. Potentially a new article debuting this week from me. So we'll tease that a little bit. But yeah, good luck this week, and we'll see you guys next week, I think.
All right, good luck, guys.